Why? Sin, selfish, pride, right? These are the things that prevent us from achieving the common good. We need God's truth, God's moral order, as our gold standard of behavior. Laws intended to serve the individual do not look to the common good. They also deviate from God's moral order. Why is this important regarding gay marriage? Because legalizing homosexual acts, while discussed in terms of rights, it's in reality a law serving an individual, not the common good. The act of sex is a personal choice. It is not an inherent right. If you walk away with one thing today, please walk away with that. Hence, legalizing homosexual unions is wrong on two levels. It is a law serving an individual choice, and second, it is a law in conflict with the common good, because no future generations can be brought forth. To many, the very idea of common good violates their notion of personal rights. Again, what they often fail to realize is that there is no personal right to a sexual relationship. This is why laws prohibiting same-sex marriage do not violate a person's rights. Now, I realize that what I'm about to say is a very controversial statement, but it must be said. Sex makes babies. I knew someone would have an epiphany. An aha moment. Now, the effect of making babies obviously has a huge impact on individuals and communities. I'll read these for you. The love of husband and wife is the force that welds society together. St. John Chrysostom. Way, way back. As the family goes, so goes the nation, and so goes the whole world in which we live. We know that making babies has a huge impact, right? When you bring that little one home, oh my God. All right? This person's going to live with us now, right? And this is why making babies is never unregulated in a society. This is why almost all cultures have regulated male-female sexual relationships. It's because these relationships produce new human beings, new bundles of joy that we get to bring home with us. Keep us up at night. Cost us a fortune to send to college. All those fun stuff. Right? Babies, as we all know, depend on this long process of ongoing care in order to achieve physical, moral, and cultural maturity, right? Men and women bring very different strengths to this process, and strengths that are better suited to the process the more closely they are related to the children. Children will never become healthy, upright, or productive members of society unless they mature. What we call civilization depends on these kinds of citizens. And producing these kinds of citizens is impossible unless men and women commit their lives to each other and their children. To suggest that civilization depends on strong natural marriage is to recall who designed marriage, who designed the human race. It gets back to God, right? In what other ways does civilization depend on marriage? Just think about it for a second. What happens in a society where there isn't natural marriage? Just think about it for a second. That was good timing. The Holy Spirit is here. What happens in a society where there's no natural marriage? Everyone develops, or most everyone develops, these autonomous sexual relationships. In other words, it becomes one massive hookup culture. What happens to the children in that culture? Who cares for the children? What happens to inheritance laws? Do you think sexual abuse and violence would increase in that scenario? Do you think jealousy would increase in that scenario? So far, none of these things seem very good to me. This is why natural marriage is important to civilization. The free love model simply does not work. And as I said before, no such model has ever survived in history. If such a culture had thrived, we would have heard the anthropological argument for same-sex marriage. But we have not heard that argument, and we will not, because it does not exist. This example helps people envision the truth about the meaning of sex other than a personal activity. It has huge impact on our civilization, on our country. So when you're having this discussion with a secular audience, we must point out that the preservation of marriage is not a negative force against personal choice. Those other personal choices are not made illegal by preserving natural marriage as the only model of marriage recognized by the state. The reality is this: preserving the definition preserves the truth that men and women make babies. And for some, that's newfound knowledge. Yeah. And men and women and their babies together make families. Right? Everybody have families here? We're making babies. Okay? To acknowledge that observable reality does not detract from the legal freedom to make a lifestyle choice. What it does do is save, preserve, and grow our civilization. Now, others may object that same-sex couples can be parents and provide for their families. They can, but without the complementarity of a man and a woman, and the studies on this are many, to suggest that the parenting brought would be less without a man and a woman. We're talking about long-term, what they call longitudinal studies, right? One-parent households, either raised by the father or raised by the mother. The impact on the kids is notable, and it's not good, generally speaking. Yet the large empirical literature on child well-being suggests that the two sexes bring different talents to parenting, and that children benefit from growing up with their biological parents. It also suggests that children reared by same-sex parents will experience greater difficulties with their identity, their sexuality, their attachments to kin, their marital prospects as adults. And then you have the factor of AIDS and sexually transmitted diseases will likely reduce the life expectancy of one of the homosexual partners, increasing the likelihood of an early loss of a parent or a surrogate parent. Now, I readily admit there are few subjects in our nation that are as difficult to approach as the status of same-sex unions. And it's crucial for us Catholics to understand the anguish this topic can cause among people of goodwill. Some who promote same-sex unions are simply seeking to ease the hurt they see in their loved ones or friends or co-workers. And in many cases, their intentions are to be compassionate, and that needs to be respected. I have a number of relatives and close Catholic friends who support gay marriage out of compassion. Their compassion, unfortunately, comes at the expense of the common good and ultimately comes at the expense of their gay friends. They just don't see it. And to say that we've had some rather animated discussions would be an understatement. Now, our goal in a secular discussion on natural marriage is not to show why homosexual acts are wrong. It's to show how preserving and strengthening marriage and families is the best for all of society, including those with same-sex attraction. Everyone should be deeply concerned about the institutional consequences of same-sex marriage. Everyone should be. The consequences of same-sex marriage on the institution of marriage itself. Same-sex marriage would further undercut the idea that procreation is connected to marriage. Now, this is another one of those, just think it through logically. When procreation is no longer connected to marriage, what does marriage become? Irrelevant, correct. Does God want marriage to be irrelevant? No. Will our civilization survive if marriage becomes irrelevant? No. So it's not a topic to be dismissed. It would also undermine the idea that children need both a father and a mother. And again, the studies are out there. I don't want to cite all the statistics. It would also further weaken the societal norm that men should take responsibility for the children they beget. We're already seeing that. I read a study by the Brookings Institute said since the early 1970s, every incremental dollar in welfare spending can be traced directly back to the breakdown in the family in the big cities. Every dollar. Family is important. And then finally, same-sex marriage would likely corrode the marital norms of fidelity. Because if it's not lifelong and if it's not exclusive, then it's just one big swingers party. I don't think that's what God had in mind. Very many gay marriage advocates, gay couples, they tend to downplay the importance of sexual fidelity in their definition of marriage. In fact, some gay marriage activists really want to open up marriage to any combination and any number. All you have to do is read the literature to understand what's really trying to be done. Now, one thing that complicates our witness for natural marriage is aggressive atheism. How many people know someone termed an aggressive atheist? Right? Who'll get up on your face pretty quick, right, about God? Okay. Problem there is you need to have the conversation. And most atheists will not be convinced by any argument for natural marriage based on God. Why? They don't believe in God. But conversion, their conversion, requires the mystery of God giving His grace to that atheist. Remember in the beginning I said this is about us as well? It also requires a decision deep in the heart of a person to accept that gift of grace and make the assent of faith. Now, atheists will generally be looking for some argument, some other line of reasoning which supports your position, but they won't find it because your faith in God's design of marriage did not come from an argument, although arguments may have helped. It came from a free response to an invitation from God. That's where your faith comes from. And the mysterious thing about faith is that it cannot be coaxed, it cannot be fabricated, it can only be received. And faith is a grace, it's a gift from God. It's only God who can give it to whom He will, whenever He will. But it's not to say we cannot, like Apollos, water the seed of faith God may have planted in the heart of that atheist. This is your work, to water. We believe not because we understand all that God has revealed, or because we have seen the evidence for all that God has revealed. We believe God because we believe Him who has revealed it to us. Right? We believe the message because we believe the messenger. God is not an idea that we've made up. He's not a projection of our needs and desires. He's not a product of evolutionary psychology. That's an interesting argument, but it's wrong. And then simply put, God doesn't come from within us. Our faith does not come from us, it comes from God. When God moves me with His grace, I can choose either to trust Him and believe what He has revealed, I can turn away. Now, God in His great mercy has instituted the church because He has willed that through it we